Hello the internet and welcome back to my channel. On the bench today we have a motherboard. It's a socket 3, it's an ASK 1487/89. We've seen this board before on this video. It was a mail video, an unboxing video. We briefly tested it and it was dead. I have a note here saying no life. And I did say on that video I will just make a dedicated video where we would try to fix the board. Well, this is the video. So we're gonna take a look, we're gonna try and fix this board. It's a socket 3, so it means it works with my 486, and this is the only 486 I got, by the way. It's an AMD AM486 DX4 100 MHz. The board should already be configured for this CPU, and we are gonna see what we can do for it. Now, the board is in decent shape. I can see a little bit of, it's not exactly corrosion, there is a little bit of corrosion on this pin here of the IDE connector, and I see some maybe oxidation around the chipset. I'm not entirely sure. I think it's just age, but nothing really too nasty or to be concerned about. Everything seems to be okay. I don't see damage on this side. I don't see damage on this side, though on this side here I can see something. I can see some rework signs on those pins, which are the clock crystals, and also here the battery connectors. Also, there is a green dot on the power connector. I think this is a 5 volts. So either someone has worked on this board before, or I'm not sure about the green dot, but everything else could be factory touch-ups. So maybe it's nothing to be worried about. Now, this board was sent to me by one of my Patreon supporters, Pavel. Thank you very much, Pavel, for sending this board. I don't remember exactly what he said about this board. It might have been one of those he couldn't even remember to have enclosed in the box. So anyways, we're going to test everything. We're going to make sure that we have voltage, clock, reset line, and, we'll move from there and we'll see what happens. It looks that someone has peeled off the BIOS sticker here, so someone might have worked on this board, but I don't see anything nasty being happening or being done to this board, so hopefully we can find what's wrong and fix this board. So let's not waste any more time. Let me thank today's sponsors, Reflowing, and now let's start working on this board. Alright, I spared you the jumper setup because it's incredibly complicated. It's one of those boards where you have lots and lots and lots of jumpers all over the board, and yeah, it's taken a few minutes. But anyways, they were already in the right place, so last time I didn't make a mistake. Now let's double check. We have voltage first. My CPU should be a 3.3 volt. 3, 2, 1, go. And we got 3.57, which I guess is fine with no load, and it's probably not going to be super accurate. The next pin is going to be the reset line, even though probably we can see that on the post analyzer card as well. It should be a flashing LED, but let's check on the socket as well. 3, 2, 1, go. Yes, so you can see with the oscilloscope in roll mode, it clearly goes high and then low again to disable itself. And finally, we are supposed to see clock here. Now, I'm not entirely sure the 486 100 MHz, whether it's expecting 100 MHz or a different frequency, but let's give it a go. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, yes, we do have, and it's 33 MHz, and I understand that this is the correct clock for this CPU. Something I've noticed is that the clock begins with a higher amplitude. 3, 2, 1, go. That's interesting. But anyways, it's peak to peak 2.8 volts, and it's reading 33 MHz, so I think the clock is totally fine. So I would say, because we have the clock, the reset line, and the voltage is fine, but I believe, if I remember right, that this board is completely dead, and we can check in a second. Got the processor in, let's turn it on. 3, 2, 1, go. Yeah, it's completely dead, which points to potentially a BIOS problem. Also, because I saw that someone peeled off the sticker here, I would say that's probably where I want to focus my attention next. Alright, the BIOS IC is a 27C1001. I'm not sure I have replacement for those, but maybe, hopefully I don't need them. I can wipe this one and flash it again. So the first thing, I think I'll take out the BIOS and read it in my programmer and, compare it with the one which is on the retro web and maybe override it and see if that fixes the problem. The BIOS is in, let's read it. Well, we definitely got something out of it. I've loaded the BIOS I found on the retro web on the buffer. It looks identical, to be honest, but we can ask the tool to do it for us, to do a verification for us. That's bad news. So the BIOS is identical, so there's nothing wrong with this BIOS, at least assuming that the one on the retro web is the correct one. I'm checking the pins on the BIOS and I do see some activity. This is a random data line. If I turn it on, 3, 2, 1, go. you do see some activity. So something is definitely happening, but then it stops. Oscilloscope is in normal mode, so it basically stays on screen with the last activity that is found on the line. And this is the output enable pin. So if that doesn't work, obviously the IC is not going to output anything. 3, 2, 1, go. And as you can see, there's not much, but there is some activity. There is some enable signals coming from somewhere. So this is kind of weird because it looks like there is some activity, but there's not even enough to show one code on the postcard analyzer. So I'm not sure what's going on because, again, we have all the basics, but still the board seems to be dead. There is a small 32 kHz crystal. It's by the chipset here, so I'm assuming it might be for driving the chipset itself, and it's working totally fine, so that's not our problem. This is the PCI clock, which is reading 33 MHz. It's a bit jittery, but I'm assuming it's because of my long ground lead, so it's kind of expected. This is the ISA clock at 7 MHz, which is totally expected. And this is the oscillator pin on the ISA slot, which is supposed to be 14 MHz, and it is 14 MHz. So the board seems to have all the clocks, all the signals, or at least the basics ones, but it's not capable of doing anything. It's a bit weird. I've tried with or without the battery, and it doesn't seem to change anything, because even with the battery, there's no activity whatsoever. I made an IC with the BIOS from Dexter from the RetroWeb Discord server. Thank you very much for making this BIOS. It's very, very simple. It only does one thing. It writes, I think it's 80 on the postcard, post analyzer, and it stops. So, that works with any board. It doesn't depend on the hardware on the board or anything, and that tells me whether the board has some glimpse of light or it's completely dead. I'm using an AT29C010 just for convenience, because this is rewritable without having to use UV light. Let's turn it on, 3, 2, 1, go. And it's dead. It's very dead. So that's not good. Definitely it's not a BIOS problem, and there's something very wrong with the board itself. As a quick test, I dug out my SYS486G motherboard and I fitted the same CPU, the same RAM. I don't have a BIOS IC to write Dexter BIOS on this one, but just to make sure the CPU and the RAM is working, 3, 2, 1, go. And yes, it is doing something. I don't care where it goes, but it's definitely executing code. I'll need to think of something for the other board. Alright, time to have a look at the board under the microscope. I might have seen something which might be nothing, but you never know, and I'd like to check with the microscope. The first thing I've noticed is this bit here. I'm not sure whether that's just dirt. I think it's just dirt. Yeah, this definitely looks like dirt. I can double check with the multimeter. And yes, it does work. This is the second bit. Again, yeah, it's been damaged a bit, but I don't think this is preventing continuity, so I'll check with the multimeter again. And this is also working. Finally, I had this bit here, but once again, I don't think, well, it's clearly nothing. It's a little dirt. Yeah, absolutely, that's not even worth checking. So, yeah, I'll keep inspecting, but so far I haven't found anything. We are now at the front of the board, and this is where I really would like to check all those little legs. They are notorious for getting detached over time. Now, you can't really see under the microscope, but it's a little bit dirty here. So first thing first, I'll just dust off the board, and then I'll use some isopropyl to just clean off that area so I can see better. Oh, okay. Right, all these legs are barely soldered. I've seen that so many times. I don't see anything massively detached, like completely detached, but there's no point in testing them all, and as you can see, the moment I touch them, they just move. It's solder, it's not supposed to move. So let me reflow the whole thing here, and hopefully that's our problem. Actually, I did check some more legs before starting, and I found this corner of the North Bridge which was completely detached. That cannot be good, so I hope reflowing them all will bring some improvements. I'm using my small C210 JBC solder tip here. I need to get a different one for this type of chips. I was recommended a knife one. Apparently the solder would flow across the knife and would prevent bridges, allowing for a faster process in a drag soldering style. A bevel tip would also work better than this, I guess. Though the best tip would likely be a spoon style, which is a bevel with a little cavity to store solder. They are all available from JVC. Is there a specific one you'd recommend? This conical tip is not so great when some extra solder is applied, as the solder makes a big blob at the tip, which then causes bridges. The south bridge legs are most spaced away, so I could actually use this tip sideways for a faster process. Once the chips are flushed and cleaned with some compressed air, the outcome seems to be very good. If you follow my channels, you probably know I'm recording my videos from my garage, and over time I've collected quite a few items here. None of them is really valuable, but some ill-intentioned individuals might not be aware of that. Very often some extra lights and CCTV are a great deterrent for such individuals. And that's why some time ago I looked into security camera, and I was pleasantly surprised that I didn't need to spend an arm and a leg to have high quality devices which were able to record 24/7. My choice fell on Reflowing, and I've been pretty happy with them. So when Reflowing recently approached me offering to sponsor one of my videos, well, it was an easy choice as I use their products already, I'm happy with them, and I'm happy to recommend them. My security camera system is based on Reflowing 810A and 820A cameras. They are 4K cameras with power over Ethernet, so a single Ethernet wire is all you need. But there are Wi-Fi cameras available too, of course. Reflowing cameras have plenty of options when it comes to configuration. In fact, it can be a bit overwhelming at the beginning, but if you follow my videos, I'm sure you'll appreciate all those options. The cameras can fit an SD card, so they can record locally, but they can also save on an NVR, a network video recorder, or on an FTP server of your choice. They can record 24/7 or just when movement is detected. Reflowing cameras support many protocols, so they are compatible with security software available online. Some of them is free to use. There is a cloud option available for a fee, but Reflowing cameras don't need the internet to work. Of course, internet is required if you want to access your cameras when you're away. For this video, Reflowing sent me some products. A Wi-Fi camera, the TrackMix Wi-Fi, simply because I was not familiar with their Wi-Fi lineup, and I had some bad experiences in the past with wireless cameras from other brands. They also sent me a brand new CX810 4K camera, which features a very efficient image sensor, able to display color images with very little light, and finally an NVR model RLN16-410, which is not required for the cameras to work, but it's a plug-and-play solution when it comes to installing a complete security system. I'm pleased to say that everything worked as expected. The NVR has just been sitting under a desk, recording everything from all my cameras. The Wi-Fi camera has never shown connection issues or any issues whatsoever, and the CX810 is just amazing with its low light performance. All my cameras are also recording on an FTP server I made using a Raspberry Pi and a hard drive. It's hidden somewhere in the home, so I have a backup in case something happened. As I said, plenty of options for you to configure your system. So if you think that a CCTV system able to record high quality footage 24/7 is too expensive, well, take a look at Reflowing.com and add the links in the description. Their products are often on sale, so it really won't cost you a lot to have a reliable and quality system at your home. Just as a reference, at the time of shooting this video, the 810A Power over Ethernet 4K cameras are on sale on Amazon at less than £59. So let me thank Reflowing for sponsoring this video, and now let's go back to this motherboard. Right, all those tiny legs are resoldered. I really would love to see this board posting. It's kind of late here, I'm about to go to bed, and it would be great to know that the board is fixed and I can continue then tomorrow and test everything. CPU, RAM, and I believe the original BIOS is back in. Time to give it a go. Will it work? Let's check it. 3, 2, 1, go. Yes, it's working. Oh yes, it is working. Right, we need a video card. Yay! It's working! Okay, perfect. Got keyboard connected. Oh wow, that's one of those fancy BIOSes with graphic for a 486. I don't have a mouse connected. Oh, this is so useless. Right, it's restarting, but I haven't got a hard drive connector, so let me plug my compact flash adapter and see if that changes anything. The compact flash did not make any difference. It is being detected, which is good, but then the process would stop there and even Control-Alt-Delete would not work, requiring a power cycle. I then realized I had the external cache enabled in the BIOS, but no cache on the motherboard, so I felt optimistic, but the system would still not go past the post screen. I then enabled the fail-safe BIOS settings and the system finally booted, though it felt very slow and Landmark seemed to confirm that. Also, the turbo jumper doesn't seem to change the speed of the system. Well, the system works after selecting the safe settings in the BIOS, so there must be something in the BIOS which didn't like it, but it looks very slow. Now, I haven't played with the 486 in a long time. I would say should be faster than that. I'm not sure. Also, obviously, this system is lacking cache. It came without it. I really don't have it. I guess I can borrow it from my other motherboard, just to make sure it works. And maybe what I want to do is to actually test these CPU on the other motherboard, see what I'm getting with the cache and everything, and then restore the cache on this one, the CPU, the RAM, and see if I'm getting something similar or something completely off. But the most important thing is that the system is working. It's booting. Fantastic. I changed the turbo switch function in the BIOS. It was on disabled, so it was on high speed all the time. I basically enabled the switch, but the thing is, now without the jumper, so with the contacts open, it's reading exactly as before. And if I'm jumping or, shorting the turbo switch here, it doesn't change at all. And I understand that some boards, every board deals with the turbo in a different way. Sometimes they actually disable some cache. Now, because this board doesn't have cache, maybe that's why the turbo switch doesn't work. Let me get the other board for a moment, do a couple of tests, and then we'll come back to this one and see, whether we are getting some reasonable speeds. Because right now, I don't know, I don't remember the 486 being so slow. And yes, this system is way faster, though I had to replace the RAM because it didn't like the RAM I was using before. But anyways, these with cache is running way faster, and the turbo switch it actually works, and even in slow mode it is still much faster than the other system was on every aspect. So I'd be curious now that we have these numbers, especially with the turbo switch enabled. I will transfer everything to the other board, including the cache, and see if we are getting something similar. Otherwise, I guess we might have a problem. And with the cache enable and the same RAM that I was testing on the other board, it is definitely faster, because I was reading 24, 127, but the turbo switch still doesn't do anything, it doesn't change anything, but most importantly, the speed is still very, very low. So I'm not entirely sure what's happening here. I have a feeling it's just a matter of some settings in the BIOS, or maybe a jumper somewhere. I did change the jumper for the cache, and the system now says 128 kilobytes of cache. Let's also bear in mind that this is only 128 kilobytes of cache, because I haven't got 4 more slots for my other modules. The other was running at 256, but I don't think that would change the perceived speed from 42 to 475. So something's going on here, but I'm not sure what happens. Let's make sure that the cache is actually being used using the benchmark. Right, I was about to say everything clearly works, because you see a drop at 128 kilobytes, which is the size of the cache. And then I realized, wait a minute, this CPU has L1 cache, and there's no drop where the L1 cache is supposed to be. So I think this board is stuck into slow mode. The turbo doesn't work, which is what we noticed, but it's stuck into slow mode. And this is going to be difficult, because I understand that every manufacturer has a different way of dealing with the turbo. Well, in this case, it looks like they just disabled the L1 cache. There was an option in the BIOS to enable or disable that. Maybe I can toggle it just in case it got stuck for whatever reason, and see if that changes. But yeah, that seems to be the problem. L1 cache is not being used, it's missing for whatever reason. So let me play with it. Hopefully it's not a hardware fault, it's just a BIOS quirkiness, a BIOS glitch, and just fiddling with it will fix it. No, I simply had the internal cache disabled. I don't know if it was when I selected the failsafe and that disabled the cache. I don't know, but that's clearly disabled. So let's enable the L1 cache, which is very important, as you can imagine, and see if that changes anything. Most importantly, if it's still booting. Right, well, the board doesn't seem to work with the L1 cache enabled, with the internal cache enabled. It behaves weirdly. I started recording because I wanted to show you that the system was rebooting. And this happens when I've got the turbo jumper removed, but the external cache disabled. And it usually stops in A3, but in that situation, I saw that it kept rebooting. But as soon as I started the recording, it stopped rebooting. So it's a bit weird. Every now and then it comes up with CMOS checksum bad, as something has corrupted inside the BIOS. But it's a bit weird, but definitely 100% it doesn't work whenever I got the internal cache enabled, which obviously is not great. Right, so I've been testing everything I could on this board and I'm a bit stuck. The behavior is a bit random and it does change whether I have the internal cache, external cache enabled, disabled, all the possible combinations. Sometimes, well, without the L1 cache, it always works. With the L1 cache, it might get stuck. It might start rebooting, like a reboot cycle. It might end up with some corruption on screen after a number of reboots. Or it might start beeping for whatever reason, or it simply gets stuck after the memory count. So, I don't know, it's a bit difficult to diagnose this like weird behavior, and honestly, I don't know how I can diagnose this, so it felt like a dead end. Then I went online on Vogons and I asked the question, does anybody have any idea of why this could happen? And one user there, Jake Thompson1, came up with an interesting point. So the CPU I have here, it's an AM486 from AMD DX4 and it's model 100 SV8B, and B is the type of L1 cache inside. B stands for write back. While on the table, the jumper table for this motherboard, I have settings for the DX4 100 NV8T, and T stands for write through. But apparently all I need to do is to set up the board for the Intel P24D, but making sure that the last three jumpers, which are the voltage, are actually set for 3.3 volts. This is the 3.3 volts, while the P24D is the 5 volts. So let me go through these jumpers, and I hate this. I hate 486 boards because there's so many jumpers. But let me go through all the jumpers again. I'll set it as the P24D, and then we'll check the voltage to make sure that I'm not frying the CPU. And finger crossed, this is going to fix that. Okay, I hope I got all the jumpers in the right place. I really haven't changed the voltage, but let's double check to be on the safe side. So let's turn it on, and let's see what voltage we are getting. And we got 3.5 volts, which again, I think without load is considered to be 3.3. So that is good. Let's plug the CPU and cross our fingers. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, it's doing something. Oh, wait, look, keyboard. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, still doing something. So I'll go with internal cache enabled and external disabled. It's working! It is working! Now, wait a minute. Is it actually working? But it never went so far with the internal cache enabled. Right, the system is very slow, but I think I need to jump the turbo switch, even though I wasn't expecting that slow speed. But let's see what happens. It does work. Though this is without L2 cache, but now I should be able to see the L1 cache with the other test. Let's try that. And no, I don't see the 8 kilobyte of L1 cache in here, but it's weird because I could now finally enable them in the BIOS and it's posting. So no, something is still wrong. Right, let me fit some L2 cache, at least the system gets to a hopefully usable speed because everything is incredibly slow right now. So now the turbo switch is working, but the speed is still very low. I only have 43 megahertz here, but there's definitely something working with the turbo switch. So let's check speed seeds again. And no, I still have, now I have the level 2 cache, but definitely we don't have level 1, but the turbo switch is working. So I do feel there's an issue with either the jumpers, the configuration, or just this board doesn't like the CPU. I'm not too familiar with that. I think I'll look into that, but I thought there was an issue with the turbo, but now the turbo is working. So clearly it's not that. I don't know. I'm running the CPU identification utility, and I don't know how accurate that is, but it says the internal L1 cache is enabled in write-through mode, and that's the B version of the 486, and that should be write back. So maybe, again, something with the jumpers. I don't know how accurate that is, but it says enable, but maybe it's not working because it's enabled in the wrong way. I'll have to double check things. So I went back to Vogons again, and someone else said, well, maybe the P24D is not the right CPU that you want to use as a configuration template. There is an AMD 120 megahertz, which is a write-back L1 cache model. So they basically told me as long as you make sure that the frequencies are for the 100 megahertz and the voltage is correct, all the other jumpers might work with your CPU. So once again, I went through all the jumpers, and I also had to solder some jumpers on the motherboard, actually some posts, because they were soldered at the factory with some links, some metal links. Now, before testing the actual CPU, I checked with my oscilloscope to make sure I was not running stupid frequencies or stupid voltages, and the frequencies were wrong, and I had 40 megahertz, and I realized that the 3 jumpers I had to solder on the board were actually for frequency selection. So basically, I had to restore them as they were with the jumper instead of a link. So, this can be used for the future or for faster processors. But basically, it was only a matter of changing this section here and nothing on the frequency section. And now my oscilloscope is telling me that I have 33 megahertz and 3.3 volts as expected. I haven't tested this. Is it gonna work? I don't know. But if this doesn't work, I really don't know what to do. So let's turn it on and see what happens. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, it's posting, which is great. Let's make sure that we have the right settings in the BIOS. And the BIOS says I've got both the L1 and L2 enabled. So let's boot and see what happens. Okay, it's booted. That's a great sign. Let's see if it's any faster when testing memory. Oh yeah, that's way faster than it was before. Let's try Landmark. Yes, it's working! 472, 751 is basically exactly what I was getting with the sys. I was getting 475, 756. Exactly the same. I guess probably by tweaking the BIOS a bit, the RAM timing and something, you can squeeze something, but that's not the point. This is working. This is finally working. Now let's check whether the cache is actually being detected by the other software. I forgot the name. Well, the CPU is already reading what you'd expect for a DX4 100. Previously, it was like a 386. So let's see what the memory check is saying. Yes, that's our L1 cache. I thought it was 8 kilobyte, but obviously it's 16 kilobyte. And now we should have, yes, the 128 kilobyte of L2 cache. This board is working. So there was nothing wrong with the board. It was just a jumper setting, which is kind of puzzling me because I had no idea that the L1 cache might misbehave or not working at all with the wrong jumpers. I thought the L1 cache would just work because it's inside the processor, but clearly not. So amazing, everything is working perfectly fine. And the CPU identification utility now says the L1 cache is enabled in write-back mode, which is what I was expecting from the CPU. So thank you very much to all the users of Vogons who helped me. I was so stuck with this board and I thought, oh no, I revived it, but it's still not working. I don't know what to do. Thank you very much, guys. Now, clearly this is not the best motherboard because I've noticed something weird. Well, number one, the turbo button still doesn't work, and it is enabled in the BIOS. And the other thing is now I'm reading 472 megahertz for the CPU, but if I run something else and then I come back to Landmark, well, it's now reading 363 megahertz. I don't know what's going on, but it needs a power cycle. to recover from that. There's nothing wrong from a hardware perspective for sure. This is like a BIOS issue, or the CPU is not entirely supported by this. It's an ASK motherboard. Do I remember right? And ASK was like a sub-brand of PC chips. So I'm not surprised, but there's nothing wrong with this board. It's just probably not the best one. Actually, Alex of Bits and Bolts experienced a similar issue with a different board where the speed detected by system information would dramatically drop after some other tasks or other tests. So maybe this is a software issue or related to the chipset, some registers not being reset correctly, but it's definitely not an issue with this board. There's some kind of software hardware implementation, so there's nothing wrong with this board. In fact, it would be interesting to know where this is coming from and why that happens. And we can't finish a repair video of a vintage computer without running Doom, just to test stability, make sure everything is okay. Everything looks fine, and the final score is 2134 game ticks in 2552 real ticks. Is this okay for this CPU? I don't know, I'll have a look online. Maybe if I find something, I'll put something on screen now. But this is working. Again, I can totally see it's not like the best motherboard, so it's fine, it's working, it's stable, L1, L2, everything works. So I guess we reached the end of the video. I thoroughly enjoyed this repair. It was a simple one in the end, but it made me think a bit, especially the last part of the video where the L1 cache wasn't working. I was totally not aware of that, so it's a nice new thing to learn about the systems. I hope you enjoyed the video too. If you did, as usual, I'd appreciate a thumb up down below, and also consider subscribing to this channel and my second channel if you like this kind of things. Don't forget I'm on Patreon as well. The names of my supporters are scrolling here at the side of the screen. Thank you very much, guys. You are all amazing, and thank you, Pavel, for sending me this board. If you want to join Patreon, that would be fantastic. There is a free tier, by the way, so no excuses. If you don't want to join Patreon, I can totally understand. Maybe you can buy me a coffee, and the link is also down below in the description. If you don't want to buy me a coffee, I totally understand. I hope you enjoyed the video, and your time watching my video is important to me. I appreciate it. So that's it. I wish you a great day, and hope to see you soon again here on my channels for my next videos. Thank you very much, and goodbye. Bye-bye.